Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. Be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, Smackdown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And then now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast, subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Friday and happy weekend, everyone out there. What's going on? Good Mic Work Commentaries back at you with a very special Friday night edition of the Winged Eagle Podcast. I tried to let you guys know about this earlier on in the week, that my plans were going to be a little bit different this weekend. So hopefully you guys got that memo. And you can join us tonight for what is going to be a pretty damn loaded podcast, I think. Smackdown just went off the air a few minutes ago, and we now have a pretty nice table set for WrestleMania Backlash. We had a big return tonight with Jimmy Uso returning into the fold and opening up a whole lot of possibilities now with Seth Rollins and his relationship with Roman Reigns and the family and all that stuff. And of course, now Cesaro officially gets a title shot at Backlash, which we figured he would. But now that that's official, it feels a lot better, and super happy for Cesaro. And of course, tonight was the Throwback Smackdown, which I think most of the fans completely misunderstood what they meant by that. Here we thought it was going to be like a Throwback Smackdown episode, like with an old set, maybe the fist, the old oval screen, or some of the shit they used to do back in the day. But basically what they did is they took a whole bunch of old school shit from the warehouse, threw it in a wood chipper, and sprayed it all over the Thunderdome. You had this thing opening up with the old school, like 1980s logo, the recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment. You had the primetime wrestling theme as your intro tonight. Primetime wrestling used to air on Monday nights. If anything, this was a throwback Raw. They also had Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. McAfee was dressed like Vince McMahon with the old WWF sports coat on. Michael Cole was wearing all jean shit, like denim stuff, like he used to back in the day. He looked like a complete fool. And it was all sorts of like little tidbits from the past sewn into tonight's SmackDown. So it really wasn't, their definition of throwback was completely different from what I was thinking in my head. So it was interesting. A lot of fans considered it to be a letdown because they didn't do really a whole lot with the set, which I didn't think they'd be able to with the Thunderdome there and with the way that's all set up to sort of dismantle that or disrupt that, you know, and bring back the fist or whatever. As my cats go nuts. I didn't think that was something that was really going to be possible anyway. So kind of a letdown tonight, but they just wanted to have all sorts. It was like just basically like a fun night or a casual Friday night or a themed night at a restaurant or something is basically all this was. And we even got a cameo by Teddy Long. I made the decision to leave my cats out. I thought they'd be cool, but shit's starting to get real over here. Anyway, I'm not going to let them fuck this up. We got a lot to get into tonight, so that was kind of your SmackDown in a nutshell, but we'll go through everything match by match here. And I'll let you know what we have planned for this episode. In addition to the Throwback SmackDown review that we're going to start with, we've got some wrestling news to get into as well. And we're also going to review the Brian Pillman Dark Side of the Ring episode that debuted last night. They did a sneak peek of part 1 on YouTube, much like they did last season, I think, with the Benoit stuff. And then they released the entire episode last night on Vice. And that was much more difficult to watch than I thought it was going to be. And I want to discuss that kind of in detail because Brian Pillman's death is right up there, you know, with the ones that I think, you know, smacked me in the face the hardest, like the Owens, like the Savage, and, you know, and even like the Benoit tragedy. I consider that to be up there with, you know, really significant things in my life. So it was tougher than I thought to watch that now that Brian's been dead for 24 years, but it was crazy. We'll get into that here in this episode as well. We got a little bit of news on Alberto Del Fuckface, possible heat between Cody Rhodes and the Elite. WrestleVotes tweeted out some speculation on SummerSlam with fans and how that could be the official kickoff of fans returning and WWE going back on tour. And we're also going to maybe elaborate a little bit more on Blood and Guts. I came up here and did a test run of my news break segment that I've got to tighten up and improve on, but I thought it would be a fun, like, little dry run the other day. And we talked about the Blood and Guts finish, the crash pad spot with Jericho and MJF, and Daniel Bryan's future, his contract situation. So we'll elaborate a little bit more on that in this episode, but not too much. We might talk a little bit about what else was on Blood and Guts on Wednesday besides that main event. And I want to talk about NXT that I think has just been kind of firing on all cylinders quietly on Tuesdays, almost like under the radar. And I think that their show this past week was really good, and I enjoyed it for the most part all the way through. So NXT's been on fire lately, and it was a pretty good week overall, I think, in wrestling. And tonight's SmackDown, even though it was kind of it's not really what we had in mind for the Throwback show, I don't think tonight's SmackDown was really all that bad. Excuse me. There was a couple of moments on the show that actually kind of popped me. So we'll get into all that here throughout the evening. I'm in no time constraints here. Maybe on the East Coast, you guys got to get to bed, but it's Friday night. And what do cool dudes do on Friday night? Sit in front of your computer, watch a bald dude talk about wrestling. Only the coolest people do that, and we're cool. So I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight and party with you. And we'll do a Q&A maybe at the end. Chat it up and see whatever you guys want to talk about. And I've also have some news for you. Like I said, you're getting the podcast now instead of tomorrow, so no video tomorrow. But I have decided to go ahead and try to do a watch along on Sunday. I had mentioned that I wasn't going to do it this week because Sunday is Mother's Day. I'm in the restaurant business. I'm going to have a very busy day, but I should be home by 5 o'clock my time, which is 8 o'clock on the East Coast, which is when I've been doing the watch-alongs lately on the channel on Sundays. So we're going to shoot for it. I'm going to put the link up later tonight. You'll see it. I don't have it ready for you yet, but it will be up, and we're going to watch WWE King of the Ring 1996. It's been requested a couple times. I really like this pay-per-view. I got a ton of memories of it. The Austin 316 promo and all of that. It's near that time of the year when King of the Ring used to take place, and I think that will be a fun one to kind of go take a look back on Sean and Davey and, so much other stuff going on that show, which was interesting. Plus a Brian Pillman promo, and which is kind of fitting since we just came off of the Dark Side of the Ring from last night. So Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, watch along WWE King of the Ring 1996. Be here. Before I say hello to the chat, let me just shout out the patrons before we get going on the news and the SmackDown stuff and all of that, because that's what I usually do on the Winged Eagle. I want to thank out loud here, if it will load. JJ Legg, appreciate it. Darren Piper, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, Martin Can, Alex Dredge, Apron Bump Podcast, Dre Leggett, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Michael Tong, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dogs, Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, John Redifer, Claudio Clavadetster, Daniel Rodriguez, Barry MK, Josiah Blevins, Mr. Steve, Scott Moss, John Ripple, Michael Cuomo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, Nathan Walker, and Blake Moran. You guys are awesome. On Patreon, you keep the ball rolling, and you pay for a lot of my bullshit that it takes to keep this stuff rolling. I appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. Other than that, let's just say hello to the chat. Might be a super chat in here or two I need to knock out, and then we'll get rolling. Good to see you in here, Ryan and Dre and Melissa. Second vaccine shot. Hope you're doing all right. Mine was gnarly. Knocked me the fuck out for about a day and a half, but I recovered. I'm just fine, like it never happened. Hopefully yours will pass. What's going on? Stone Cold, David Brown, Big J, Charlie. Hi, Smackdown was dumb. It was a little. The throwback aspect of it was maybe a little dumb, but I think Smackdown had its moments tonight. Good to see you, Maka, Divine Ricks. Appreciate the $5 drop. Hey, Greg, happy Friday. Can you see a female superstar join Reigns' stable? And if you do, who would it be? Probably Nia Jax, would be the obvious one. Maybe Tamina, a close second. If, of course, she's not ready, but Simone, Rock's daughter, who I don't think is progressing that well, and I believe she got injured as well. If she was ready to rock and roll, I'd add her to the group. But, if you're going to put somebody in the stable, so far it's all family members. So you're going to have to branch out of that, or keep it in the family. And I think they have women, that can fill that role. And Nia Jax, I can't stand her character. She's kind of funny. She does have her moments sometimes, but she's a big, big woman. So they should use her in more of a, more of a vicious, rough and tough type of way. And if she joins that stable, might change her attitude up a little bit, and could make her, maybe her persona a little bit tougher, and would certainly add heat to the group, because nobody likes Nia Jax, right? What's up, Barry? Appreciate the $2 from you. The fake fist was just lazy and disappointing. Oh, I saw that. So it was like the digital fist, right? Yeah, we knew they were going to bring that fist down there. Plus, you know what? Honestly, I didn't want to see the fist, because when they first announced the Throwback show last week, when they showed that graphic, they made it look like it was the very first original SmackDown logo. And that set was completely different. We had that oval shit for a long time. I went to a bunch of SmackDowns back in the day with that set. So if anything, I actually kind of like that better than the fist. By the time the fist got there, I was already starting to be less excited about wrestling. This was post-Attitude Era and all of that. And I know that time period, Ruthless Aggression, all that could have been big in some of your lives. To me, it was already the best. I had already seen the best, in my mind. So I wanted to see the ovals. I didn't really care so much about the fist. But when you think about the Thunderdome, I was like, how are you going to do a throwback show in the Thunderdome? You probably just can't take a chunk of that shit out, and it's probably all wired together. I don't know if you can just put that fist in the middle of it. Not even sure if it's going to work. So yeah, they decided to just do like a hodgepodge of all these different throwback components, put them all into one show, and then digitize the rest. Kind of lazy, kind of disappointing. I agree. But would you expect anything less from them at this point? Did we really think they were really going to go so far out of their way to give us some really crazy, great special show? This was, I think, done in conjunction with some other throwback shit that FS1 and stuff was doing. I heard something about a throwback NASCAR show or something. So I think they were just kind of sticking with that theme, and they kind of phoned this one in. And it was what it was. I'm curious if McAfee's jacket was like an original, or if he just made it. Yeah, the fake fist made you cry. Yeah, getting fisted isn't fun. I mean, so I heard. I heard that it wasn't fun. Who's next? Oh, good. Let me say hello to some of you guys, too. Ryan and David, I got you. Seamus Maximus Berserker is here. Right on, Mr. Nord. Good to see you. Anthony Samuels and George Morris is back with $5. Hey, Greg, how you doing? Brian Pillman, Dark Side of the Ring was excellent. What did you think? My apartment manager quit and 4 guys in handcuffs. Oh, man. Tumultuous area you live in. Be careful. I'm going to talk a lot about Dark Side of the Ring in a minute, because I have a lot of notes on it. I basically kind of watched half of it twice, because I watched the sneak peek on part 1, and then last night I basically watched the whole episode through again. So I basically saw part 1 twice. And man, by the time they got to the end, it was getting rough. Thank you, Deshaun Robinson, for $5 as well. Happy, oh yeah, hey Greg, loved your Newsbreak intro. Happy birthday, Owen Hart. The second part of Brian Pillman episode was a slow, dark, downhill tragedy. Yeah, it was. And yeah, today would have been Owen Hart's 56th birthday. So happy birthday, Owen Hart. When you say that out loud, it infuriates me even more that he's passed away. He passed away, it feels like now a lifetime ago, 22 years ago or whatever it's been. He's so goddamn young. You know, he was 34. You know, essentially, think about Sting. You know, there's a possibility that had that not happened at Over the Edge, Owen might still, to this day, step inside of a ring from time to time. Probably nothing major in WWE, but he'd probably make an appearance or something, or be in some little segment with Sami Zayn where he gives him a spinning heel kick and puts him in the sharpshooter, or maybe he goes up and works for a little local, or makes some appearances for a little local promotion in Calgary or something, or, you know, maybe opens a wrestling school or works with Lance Storm. Who knows, you know, what Owen could be doing, but he would be so incredibly young. 56 is still very young, and it's just a shame. It's just a shame that he would only be 56 today. If he was still alive, with still many, many more years ahead of him. Happy birthday, Owen, man. And I agree with you about the Pillman stuff. We'll be getting into that in a second. Good to see you in here as well, Zane G, and Victor, and Regina, and Ratnick, and Cerebus. All right, nice. I think that's decent for the shout-outs for right now. Let's start rolling into what we're going to get into. I guess we're going to talk about Smackdown first because that's kind of all fresh in our minds. We'll backtrack a little bit after that, knock out some wrestling news, and then maybe elaborate on the Tuesday and Wednesday night shows. And we'll talk about that very good and promising and encouraging AEW rating for Blood and Guts, which they were #1 on cable in that demo that they're so obsessed with. So that's good news for them, and we'll be getting into that here soon. Speaking of AEW, they did the right thing today. Apparently, Mcafee from Botchamania, his channel got taken down due to basically, you know, YouTube issue or bots or whatever seeking out and filtering out the copyright stuff, and they hit him, and he got 3 of them, and it just ruined his channel. But, you know, a lot of people, Aubrey Edwards and I think Cody Rhodes and Brandy had reached out and helped and got his channel reinstated, so all is well there. It was apparently a YouTube issue and not AEW specifically going out and flagging videos. It's something to do in the, you know, in the algorithms or computer-ish areas, you know, the computer-ish parts of the YouTube is something happening there, caused them to get strikes, I guess. It's in the files are in the computer, I know that. So anyway, something all technical and shit happened there. It's figured itself out now. AEW, that's cool. I'm glad they did the right thing there because I'm very, very nervous. I heard about some of the takedowns of wrestling, the video game videos of people just coming up and talking about the video and shit getting flagged and stuff. So it makes me very, very nervous to speak about AEW or to put their name in my title or in the thumbnail or anything like that out of fear that some, you know, bot could accidentally fuck me up. But it's encouraging to know that, you know, I think I know enough people, you know, around the Twitter universe and stuff that could probably plug me into contact there. So at least, you know, if you can get through to them, they're going to help you out. And actually, WWE unflagged me not long ago, thanks to Sean Ross Sapp and Joe Cronin and a couple other people that sent me some contacts in WWE. I contacted them. They got back to me the very same day and undid everything, which was awesome. So, you know, at least this is encouraging that if you have a YouTube channel and something like this happens and you are operating under fair use, if you can get through to AEW, they'll help you out. So they did the right thing here today, and that's a relief for Mcafee and his channel. Because that's good stuff, man. Good stuff. R.I.P. to the Nugget. Owen was never a Nugget. Anyway, let's roll into Smackdown from tonight. Pretty decent throwback show. Like we talked about, it was not the throwback episode that we were expecting. I think we were all expecting the ovals. We were expecting to be fisted, and we weren't fisted. We were fisted in another way, and that is that they basically phoned this stuff in, and instead of giving us a throwback Smackdown episode, they gave us a throwback everything episode. And I knew I was confused right at the beginning when they did that old school 80s WWF, you know, bumper. In the beginning, I'm like, that was way before SmackDown. That was like mid 80s, and SmackDown wasn't until like late 90s. We're talking about 12 to 15 years prior to SmackDown's existence was when they used to use that bumper. I don't remember it past like 87. So it was a long time ago. So when they open with that, I'm like, what the fuck? And then they go into like the old Primetime Wrestling theme. Now, Primetime Wrestling was the predecessor to Monday Night Raw. It was in that time slot, and then they changed over in 1993. So if anything, this was a throwback Raw, not a SmackDown. So that was confusing the fuck out of me. And then Michael Cole and Pat McAfee welcome us to the show. Cole's wearing his denim deal, and McAfee's dressed like, you know, 1989 Vince, or 1986 Vince, I should say, with the blue jacket and everything. And then they send us right to a replay of the first ever SmackDown with the Triple H and Rock match when Shawn Michaels was the ref and super kicked the Rock, and helped Triple H retain the title or win the title. I forgot the situation there. And then they came back and you saw the ridiculous shit they were wearing. So basically the throwback episode was just them taking a whole bunch of components from the past and just smearing it all over the show. They would do the Lord Alfred Hayes thing later on, the promotional consideration paid for by the following, and they went into a Hacksaw Jim Duggan ice cream bar commercial, which I popped for, might have been the highlight of the night for me. They did other little things too. Forgot what else they did. I wrote some of them down. I'll probably notice them again as we go through here. But, they kind of had little elements like that and things from the past. And the Teddy Long stuff was actually really good too. So the throwback wasn't what we thought. It was a little lame, but, is this really something worth getting, all upset over? So they phoned it in. WWE phones everything in. Their whole goddamn show process is copy and paste. Maybe SmackDown a little less so than Raw, but Raw goddamn definitely is, that's for sure. So this is, of all the things to, criticize them for, I'm going to let this one go so we didn't get fisted. I'll live. Hopefully y'all will too. Roman Reigns. Jey Uso and Paul Heyman open up the show. Loving this new Roman Reigns theme. I really do like the entrance and the whole deal here. They come down to the ring. This was great. I take it back. I thought the ice cream commercial was my favorite part of SmackDown. The opening here was when Paul Heyman gets on the mic and decides to pay tribute to Daniel Bryan, and they're going to give Daniel Bryan a 10-bell salute, and they all bow their heads, and Heyman tells the truck, nah, don't worry about it. I got this. And he gets on the mic and he just starts going ding, ding, and he does it 10 times. That's fucking hilarious. I mean, a couple people did mention to me on Twitter that they thought it was a little bit distasteful. Nobody's actually dead here, so I get it. But, I come from the fucking Attitude Era, man. I remember when they were dragging caskets with seemingly bodies in them behind cars. I remember when Triple H was putting a mask on and fucking a corpse. So if they want to do a fake 10-bell salute with Paul Heyman going ding, fine. I thought it was quite funny, and I popped hard for it. Great shit. Roman goes on to say that Daniel Bryan is gone, and since Daniel Bryan is gone, he needs to be replaced. He needs to be replaced by a champion and a true warrior and blah, blah, blah. And I have replaced him, and then he needs to be replaced by family. And then he introduces a returning Jimmy Uso. So finally, after all this time, Jimmy comes out. I'd like to say he got a good pop, but of course, it's the Thunderdome. Jimmy comes out and he immediately embraces with Roman Reigns. And the first thing I thought of, okay, because I was wondering when he came back. We've thrown out scenarios where with Jimmy returning several times through several different pay-per-views. I think I've predicted him to come back at every single pay-per-view since he's been out. And the only one he appeared at was that Hell in the Cell. So now he's in the ring, he's hugging Roman Reigns, and I'm like, last time we saw him, unless Jimmy and Jay share the same brain, this would make sense because Jay has come around and Jay had to go through all of that to finally acknowledge Roman or whatever. So the fact that Jimmy hugged Roman, I'm like, okay, they're the same. They think the same. And that was extremely short-lived, so that was cool. Once Jimmy comes out there and he stands with the family, Cesaro then comes out and doesn't say too much. He's on the ramp and he gets attacked from behind by Seth Rollins, and that brings out Teddy Long. So Teddy Long returns. You think he's going to make a tag, but there's nobody for Cesaro to tag with. It's all heels out there. So instead of making a tag, he announces that the scheduled Seth Rollins and Cesaro match that's supposed to take place is now going to have a stipulation where if Cesaro wins, he challenges Roman for the title at Backlash. We figured that. We mentioned that just this past week. They're going to do something tonight on SmackDown that's going to give Cesaro that title shot because he's the only real challenger that makes sense for Roman right now based on what they've been doing on TV. So it's going to be Cesaro, and Teddy now makes this match I guess essentially it's not a stip, actually. I should take that back. I believe it's a number one contenders match, right? I'm sorry, I had that wrong. It's not a stip. Whoever wins this match faces Roman for the title. So I guess Jay and Jimmy stay out there, I guess, to kind of just watch. But we go to commercial, we come back, and that match starts right away, even though Cesaro got attacked. It takes a while for the bell to ring. Once it does, Rollins winds up getting angry at Jimmy and Jay, both out there. He gets a little bit distracted. Cesaro flies over the top rope, takes everybody out with a dive, throws Rollins back in the ring, floats over, nails him with a neutralizer, gets the win, and it's kind of a distraction type of finish there with Jay and Jimmy kind of fucking up. So right off the bat, you're like, here we thought Jimmy was just going to be here with the family, and within minutes, they've got dissension right off the bat here, and Jay and Jimmy have fucked up. So I think we go to commercial, we come back. Seth is backstage talking to Roman Reigns. He's pissed off, and Roman says, yeah, my cousin screwed you, but you screwed me by not beating Cesaro or whatever. So now he's got to deal with Cesaro, and he says he'll deal with his family, he'll handle it or whatever. So Seth kind of accepts that, and he goes, okay, you deal with it and get back to me or whatever the fuck. We then go to Teddy Long and Sonia Deville backstage. Sami Zayn comes in and he's trying to take advantage of Teddy Long being kind of an unbiased observer here because he hasn't been around and he doesn't really know how badly, and he's not in on the conspiracy to screw Sami over. So he comes in and tries to advocate for an Intercontinental title match. Teddy Long does his classic, you're going to face The Undertaker, and teases that. Then he says he'll be in a big tag team match, a big 10-man tag that I think is going to consist of Sami Zayn, Apollo Crews, Otis, Chad Gable, and King Booker, but he means King Corbin, taking on the Street Profits, Big E, Shinsuke, and Kevin Owens, I believe, in a 10-man tag later on. So, and then after that, Sami is highly annoyed, and I think Teddy says playa or something. He's trying to dance, and he goes, come on, don't you have any moves? And Sami goes, yes, Teddy, I have great dance moves. But he says it almost like in a Napoleon Dynamite kind of way. Yes, I have great dance moves, but he's annoyed. Fucking hilarious. We then cut to Roman Reigns giving shit to Jimmy Uso, and this is where it gets good, and this is where I liked Jimmy. This makes sense. Finally, some fucking continuity in WWE storytelling here. Roman is backstage kind of giving shit to Jimmy for fucking up out there. You've been out here fucking 9 minutes and you're already screwing shit up. And Jimmy goes, fuck you, bro. You're not going to talk to me the way you talk to my brother. I ain't nobody's bitch. And he walked away, and I'm like, thank you, Jimmy Uso. That makes sense. Because if this guy would have came in and just been exactly like his brother, don't you want to try to establish these guys as two different people? That was a big part of Jey Uso's promo a few weeks back. People always just say, which one are you? He wants to be known in his own. So the last thing they need to be doing here is having these guys come in and have the exact same goddamn personality. So I like that Jimmy is a little bit more realistic, and he's like, you ain't talking to me like that. So that's cool. That's what a man should do. After that, we get Carmela versus Ruby Riot. I wasn't paying too much attention to this match, but Carmela does get the win here, tapping her out with her finish. So Carmela, they continue to kind of keep her around. We'll see what happens in the future there. After that, a pretty fun Bayley promo. She's out there to tribute past stars, but she can't resist the urge to make it all about herself. They show some pictures on the Tron of Alundra Blaze, Jacqueline, Molly Holly, maybe somebody else. They finally get to Bianca Belair, and she says, she basically starts running her down and says that she's insecure and she's going to beat her for the title of Backlash and blah, blah, blah. That's going to prompt out Bianca. She does. She comes out. She goes, oh, hell no, I'm not insecure. I'm living my best life. Fuck you, Bayley. Bayley then starts laughing like an asshole. I'll tell you what, Bayley found something that got under my skin. When she was laughing like that, I was like I was watching on my computer. I was like scrambling for my mouse to turn it down. I'm like, stop laughing in my ear. Goddamn, Bayley. So that annoyed the shit out of me. She then goes for a leg dive on Bianca. Bianca sees it coming, reverses it, kicks her ass, but Bayley then does turn the tables and grabs her by the earring to kind of gain the advantage, and then puts her down with whatever move that was. She probably has a name for it, and that was the end of the segment. So Bayley has got the title shot coming up at Backlash, and I don't think she's going to beat Bianca. I don't think she should. You talk about a great way to really establish Bianca as a major player to beat Sasha Banks at WrestleMania in the main event, mind you, and then pretty much the second strongest woman they have on SmackDown right now, and Bayley beating her as her first title defense instead of maybe somebody like a Carmela or somebody that has less of a chance to actually win the title. This is Bayley, so if she puts Bayley down right away, that's a pretty good way to establish her as saying, she's going to hold on to this belt for a while. And that might be good, because if she puts down Bayley too, who really other than Bayley and Sasha right now currently on SmackDown is a really legit contender for that title, who could really take it off of her. So she's got that thing, through Money in the Bank at least, and maybe she drops it in that way. Maybe the Money in the Bank winner cashes it in on Bianca at some point. But, right now it doesn't feel like she's got too strong a challengers on that show other than Bayley and Sasha, and she's about to dispose of both of them. So I think Sasha's probably going to return, and this time return kind of full-blown heel, I suppose, unless she already was. I forgot. So maybe their saga is not quite over yet. Bayley, though, man, I'd love to see Bayley maybe put over Bianca clean, but then win the briefcase. Bayley's a lot like Miz, and in a lot of ways, to where she'd be fun. She's a lot like Kevin Owens. She'd be a really fun briefcase holder because she would always talk about it. She'd be so obnoxious with it. She'd tease the fuck out of it every week, and really probably make the briefcase entertaining. And could be a way for her to get back to the title at some point. I don't know. No, it should go. Good mic work. It should go to a young person. You're already saying it in the chat. I know you are. After that, little backstage powwow with Jimmy Uso and Jay Uso. Jay, trying to convince Jimmy to kind of just acknowledge him. Come on, man, just do it. And Jimmy's like, no, fuck you. After that, we get Rey Mysterio, supposed to take on Dolph Ziggler. Dolph gets in the ring, gets on the mic, and immediately starts talking shit to Dominic. Now, Dominic and Rey have got a tag team title match against the Dirty Dogs at Backlash. So, of course, typical shit we get before a tag team title match. What happens? The competitors face one-on-one. So I thought we were going to get Mysterio and Dolph here, which meant we were probably going to get Rude and Dominic next week. But instead, Dolph gets on the mic, starts running down Dominic. He makes an Animal House reference by calling him Flounder, which looks nothing like Flounder. And besides, Flounder's a boss. But that really, really old school reference. That's something Jericho would do. The wrestling fans these days, 9 people are going to get that reference. So I thought that was funny. Kind of goads Dominic into challenging him to a match. I guess he wants to get out of the match with Rey. So I don't know the backstory on that. Am I missing something here? Wasn't supposed to be Rey and Dolph. So hopefully Rey's not hurt or tweaked up or anything like that. It turns out to be Dominic and Dolph instead. Dominic catches Dolph with a quick pin and beats him, surprises him. So I guess we're probably going to get Rey Mysterio and Bobby Roode next week, or maybe Dolph will want a rematch against Dominic. And maybe he'll beat him, and Dirty Dogs will kind of get the last laugh on the go home. But then Rey and Dominic win the tag team titles at Backlash. I would have rather had Rey and Dominic win the tag team titles in front of fans at WrestleMania. As hard as Rey has worked for that company and the way he's broken his fucking back for them, they should have given him that. I'm still a little salty about it. I mean, especially if they turn around and give them the titles now. Well, if you're going to get them the titles now, why didn't you do it and give them that moment? These two guys get to now live the rest of their lives saying, we won the tag team championships together at the greatest wrestling show, and a very significant one. First one after fans, after this pandemic. What a moment. The fans probably would have gone nuts for that and marked out. I would have thought it was cool, only because of history. We've had fathers and sons teaming up before, but we've never had a father-son team where the father can still fucking go. Larry the Axe and Kurt teamed a couple of times. Dusty and Dustin did. Vern and Greg did. But it was never. Mike and Eddie did. But it was, and Brett and Stu did. But they were never in a position to win tag team championships for real on a big stage. Maybe in a regional, but not on a big stage like this. And for them to be actual credible champions, where not only is the son capable of wrestling, his dad is too. That's awesome. Give it to him at WrestleMania, WWE. You guys dropped the ball on that. Should have shown Mysterio some love there. I think him and Dominic both deserved it. After that, we get a Kayla interview with Reginald backstage. We got an intergender match coming up with Reginald taking on Tamina, and this is interesting. I think Reginald, is the perfect guy to have kind of bridge this beginning with these intergender matches. If you notice, WWE's kind of dipping their toes in a little bit, testing it. We've gotten a couple now, and this is the best way to do it. Here, all these years ago, I was thinking that they were going to do it was going to be like big time. I remember last year hearing a rumor about Charlotte and Randy Orton, and I'm like, that would actually be a good match. But boy, would they go that full force with it. This is a little bit different, where Reginald in most of these cases, he's the underdog in this, and Tamina basically just whips his ass in this match. So WWE is pulling this off, actually, because we've talked about before we started getting intergender matches, if we think it's a good idea, would it work? What's your opinion on it? Fans vary. I know there's some wrestlers vary. I know Lance Storm is someone who's very much against it, and he has his reasons. He's not against it for any other reason that he just, he's just really old school, and I kind of see his point there. But at the same time, I think that would open up more doors to just doing more fun shit, because wrestling is kind of running out of ideas. In case you haven't noticed, so doing some stuff like that might be fun. Who knows? Wrestling is always evolving. Nothing stops evolving. If you stop evolving, that sucks. Then you're going to die off. So you should evolve. And that's why we see so many people now in the ring, smaller wrestlers and different styles of wrestling and all this stuff that Jim Cornette and shit hates. But it's just evolution. Change with the times or let it pass you by. So I'm into this in the future, and I think WWE's doing it in such a way where I haven't seen anybody, being any sort of a, an easily offended critic or a woke critic or anything like that, saying, oh, it's fucked up what they're doing. They're actually doing it in a great way. Back 25 years ago, they would have disgraced themselves in this, in the Attitude Era or something like this. It would have been all sexual, and Reginald would have been trying to feel up to Mina and shit. Here it's just, it's done in a more, kind of lighthearted way, and Reginald is supremely entertaining and very talented, and he can go in there and actually have a pretty decent match with a woman. So I thought this was fun. They didn't get a chance to wrestle very long. Tamina was whipping his ass. Shayna jumps up on the apron, interferes, causing the disqualification. Natalya then jumps in the ring. Big brawl there between the four of them. And Natalya and Tamina have a tag team title shot next week on SmackDown against Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax. So here we go again with this shit. Feels like we've already had one of these matches, and they've been defending the titles all the time and constantly surviving. They're going to do it again next week. Do I even care? Do I want to see Natty and Tamina with the titles? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, second generation, I'm into that. I like Tamina. I thought she cut a pretty good promo on Talking Smack week or so back or whatever, but, I don't know. I don't even care if they win or not. After that, this was kind of cool. Another kind of old school aspect of the show is we got this 10-man tag booked. So they interviewed all the heels together, kind of like Survivor Series style backstage, where, Apollo is kind of the leader, and then everybody behind him was like, and they're all psyching up. Very, very 80s. Loved that. They did the same thing for Big E and all his boys. So they're setting you up here for the 10-man tag. Didn't pay a ton of attention to the 10-man tag because I was folding my laundry, but I do know that the heels won. Baron Corbin pinned Shinsuke Nakamura for the finish there. I don't know if the match was like super exciting. You guys can tell me, but it was old school, and at the end of the day, it didn't even matter. Not a fan of Shinsuke Nakamura as the one taking the pin when you got 9 other motherfuckers in there, but he did, so whatever. We then go to, I guess this is the main event. Roman Reigns backstage earlier on told Paul Heyman to summon his cousin. Heyman's like, which one? And he goes, you know which one. So he goes and gets Jey Uso, and Roman says him and Jey are going to go to the ring to bring out Jimmy and figure this shit out. So they do. Roman comes out. He starts to talk about Jimmy before he even gets 2 words out. Jimmy interrupts him. So music plays. Jimmy comes down to the ring before Roman can even speak. And here's where they did, I think, the right thing with the storyline. They finally had some continuity here because Jimmy, now, one thing that is weird that he hugged Roman in the beginning. He should have came out and said all this right at first. I don't know why he hugged him. I guess he waited for Roman to disrespect him. And then he's like, okay, bitch. So he came out there and he talks about the Hell in the Cell, so much so that he played a replay of Hell in the Cell on the Tron. So they replay that, what happened last year where, Roman kind of forced Jimmy to quit, or Jey to quit for him, or Jimmy to quit for him, or what the fuck happened there, choked out Jimmy as well. And he brought all that up and rehashed all of that, which was cool. And Jimmy said, you know what, if that was me, I would have never said I quit no matter what. And he has not taken any of Roman's shit. And Roman says, you either acknowledge me or take your ass home. So Roman didn't threaten to kick his ass. He threatened just to send him home. So Jimmy says, okay, he goes to leave. He gets out of the ring, starts walking away, stops in the aisleway. Jey Uso jumps out of the ring to come up and try to convince him, come on back. And he's kind of talking to him like, just acknowledge him. Just do it, man. It'll be fine. It'll be easier if you'll just fucking cooperate here is basically what he's saying. While he's out there trying to convince Jimmy, Cesaro hits the ring from behind, takes advantage of an isolated Roman Reigns, attacks him, and knocks him down. Both Usos run in the ring, and even Jimmy, to try to make the save. Cesaro takes both of them out, and he kind of retreats up the ramp or something and celebrates as the show goes off the air. So Cesaro got the last laugh on Roman tonight. The Usos, the conflict remains there. You don't know. Jimmy is definitely conflicted. When Cesaro hit the ring, Jey Uso ran in there first to help Roman. Jimmy stayed on the outside a bit first, kind of not sure what he wanted to do, and then ran in there once he saw his brother getting beat down. So I think with Jimmy, they're still kind of leaving you wondering there if he's, what it's going to take to get him to acknowledge. Now, this might be WWE's way of just saying, okay, if we want to bring Jimmy Uso back in, we have to talk about what happened back in October. Otherwise, it might not make sense. I don't know. Does WWE really give a shit about that stuff? It doesn't seem like they do. But if this is just a way to get Jimmy to acknowledge Roman and for him to fall in line and be a part of this team, it's like they have to address the elephant in the room first, and Jimmy has to show, he has to show anger for what happened there, and they have to work out that conflict for him to fully enter the group. Because if he just came out tonight, hug Roman Reigns, and he's standing by their side, like I said earlier, what that would mean is that Jimmy and Jey Uso share a brain. And that's not cool to them, especially when they're trying to actually establish different identities between the two. So I kind of like what they did here with the whole Roman Reigns, Jey, and Jimmy situation. It will, if I had to guess, I think maybe everything comes together. It's all tumultuous, but things come together at Backlash. I think Roman's going to beat Cesaro and retain the title. I love Cesaro and stuff, but Cesaro's going to be a good opponent for Roman to beat. It's going to get him some extra heat because that he's kind of lost from all those fans that hated him for being John Cena 2.0. They got to get back some of that. So you beat Cesaro, that could be one way to do it. But I think maybe Jimmy and Jey get on the same page. Maybe they collectively help Roman retain the title at Backlash, and maybe they come together and do a triple hug or a triple kiss or a triple fist bump or booty shake. I don't know what they're going to do, but maybe something to kind of signify their solidarity, and they're going to be a tight-knit unit going forward. That's what I think could happen there, and they're kind of just working out the kinks, because I would like to see them together before they start bickering. That's like a reverse. That's what's kind of interesting about this faction is most factions begin with love and then they break up. This one's breaking up first, and then, then they're going to kind of get together, and then they'll probably inevitably break up again the more the abuse goes on. But now you can think about adding maybe Seth Rollins to this mix as well. He's going to have issues with both Usos now for what happened to him, and eventually, what that could mean with him and Roman later on could be intriguing, I think, due to their history and stuff, because this is a brand new Roman. So to have Roman, has he told Seth Rollins to acknowledge him yet? Because when you think about it, the two of them have the same gimmick. Seth Rollins wants everybody to join the Revolution or the Monday Night Messiah, and everybody must think in the way he thinks. It's kind of in the same neighborhood as Acknowledge Me. So what happens when these two personalities collide? If Seth Rollins says, "Come on, Roman, follow me. I'll take you to the promised land." Roman's like, you acknowledge me. What happens then? So there's potential there, and there's potential everywhere. But anyway, that's kind of your Smackdown in a nutshell. I'll see if you guys had anything interesting to say about it in the chat here. Do me a favor, smash the thumbs up. I'd super appreciate that. Would always help. Doink and Dink teamed too. They're not father and son, though. With a throwback show, I'd like to see some throwback characters like Rocky Maivia and Head Shrinker Fatu. That would be cool. My God, could you imagine? Or maybe Make a Change Fatu. That's even better. That was a horrible gimmick. But if he came out there as Make a Change Fatu, and Rocky Maivia had like the Survivor Series 96 gear on with his fucking Chia Pet head and that weird ass shit he wore, oh my God, that'd be funny. They'd be so out of place. Maybe the Usos could dress the way they used to with the bright and colorful face paint. And Roman's always just kind of been dark. But embrace the vision. That's right. I didn't know what he said. Something like that. Embrace the vision. So yeah, embrace the division, or embrace the vision is the same as acknowledge me in a lot of ways. And I think that could add to some fun as well down the road. We'll see. Anyway, since that takes care of SmackDown, let's just talk about a couple of news tidbits, and then I want to dive into this Pillman documentary because I got to look at that last night, and it was what it was, and it brought up a lot of memories because I was 20 when Pillman died, and I remember finding out with everybody on the free for all of Bad Blood. And to kind of have to relive that and learn a lot about Brian Pillman's private life and some of the situations there. It was tough to watch and tougher than I thought. I thought I'd be able to handle it, because of how many years it's been and stuff. And I thought the Benoit stuff and Owen would be much rougher, but this was up there with both of them in terms of, just the emotion and stuff and how crazy the whole story was. So I definitely want to talk about that after we get into the news. Let me scroll back up to that news portion of my notes here. Not much to really talk about that I wrote down, only a couple of things. Number one, I want to talk about that WrestleVotes tweet. They tweeted out earlier on today some speculation about SummerSlam, and I quote, WWE is looking to have SummerSlam be the official kickoff as a, quote, return to touring. With that said, if things work out a certain way, the pay-per-view might even be earlier than usual this year. I've heard 3 to 4 locations are on the table, with one having better odds than the others. Winking face. That I pasted that tweet. They must have had a winking face because I actually wrote that. emoji there. So we talked about SummerSlam last week, and I think the best possible place for SummerSlam would be Las Vegas, because it's going to be outside. It's going to be nice. It ain't going to rain. It's going to be open air. You can distance, have a lot of people there, and it would be warm. It would have a summery type of vibe to it, and that's where it should be. The fact that they've got 3 to 4 locations on the table is interesting. You got to wonder if they're all outdoor locations or if these are indoor locations. We don't know if they're out of the state of Florida, if they're into the state of Florida, who knows? But I think it would be fun to do it in Vegas and to do it outdoors and to kind of have that welcome back. And then maybe in the fall, you start your touring schedule or whatever. That's interesting. We'll keep our eye on that, but throw out your speculation, your suggestions there about what other cities or venues other than Vegas, you think could be actually in the running there. And if it's an outdoor show, you're probably going to have to rule out baseball stadiums, because we're going to be right in the thick of baseball season when SummerSlam is here. It's probably not going to give them enough time, even if the team is on a road trip, to get a SummerSlam set up and tore down and all that stuff. Otherwise, Petco Park right here in San Diego would be a perfect place for that. But I don't think it would work just due to baseball. So find a football stadium somewhere. I don't know. Other than that, a couple other things I want to mention. Alberto Del Fuckface's trial, originally scheduled for May 3rd, has been postponed until August 2nd, according to PW Insider. This is interesting because he's got his match with Andrade, I guess Andrade's return match. Andrade has also challenged Kenny Omega at Triple Mania, which will also probably take place sometime late summer, most likely August, or maybe even September or something like that. But ahead of that, on July 31st, he's taken on Alberto Del Rio in a one-on-one match. Apparently 2 days after this match happens, he's going to go on trial for the kidnapping counts and the assault charges and all that really disturbing shit that he's being accused of. Yes, I know he's being accused of it, but he's being accused of some extremely specific shit that, as the saying goes, you can't make that up. And then on top of that, we already know that he's no goddamn saint. He's already made himself look like an ass several times, especially during that relationship with Paige. So I don't know. We'll see what winds up happening there, but he's postponed his fate now. If it turns out that he's tried and he's found guilty, he's looking at some serious jail time, definitely a fine, and he could get life. He could get 5 to life, I guess, is what the the possibilities are here. So obviously he wants to beat those charges, but if he's innocent, he's innocent. We'll wait and find out then, but it has been postponed, so his match with Andrade should be fine. Some story was kind of floating around here this week, I think, that was actually broke or mentioned for the first time on Cornette's podcast about some possible heat between Cody Rhodes and the Elite in AEW. And there was some chatter about that. Even Sean Ross Sapp had acknowledged the rumor important enough to at least ask about. And then when you start thinking about Dynamite and TV and you think about Cody and the Elite, and they feel like they've been really two separate entities on the show. I've seen very little interaction at all on TV between Cody and the Bucks or Kenny or anything like that. So if there is some internal heat, that could be possible. We've talked about in the past, like what's going to happen down the road in the future with AEW when you have so many executives and so many people, in executive roles and stuff in the company. If you do have some conflicts, if you do have some heat here or there, how that's going to play out, how everybody's going to work together and play nice. And the fact that we haven't seen much interaction here, and Cody seems to be kind of operating on his own in a separate wing of Dynamite, doing stuff with his Nightmare family and extensions of that with the QT Marshall stuff and everything. And he's really not even, he hasn't made much mention of wanting to get a title shot against Omega in the future or doing anything with his boys at all. So I guess when you think about it, there might be something to that rumor, but apparently no one is talking about that, according to Fightful, or reached out, or it's not really anything that people are too concerned about, but there might be some, creative or professional issues going on behind the scenes between some of their executive wrestlers. So that's something that's probably going to happen from time to time. It's never not happened in the wrestling business. You can't have a company that just works completely perfect all the time and everybody gets along. That ain't reality. So, this is probably just the normal type of stuff that goes on backstage, but it might be one of their first instances of this, and how they handle it, should be interesting, how they're able to work within these conflicts and these maybe disagreements and shit that may or may not happen. I don't know. Paulo, I'm a legend? No, I ain't a legend. I'm on the internet at Friday night with 74 people watching. I think I'm the opposite of legend, but thank you for that, man. Appreciate it. Let me knock out a couple supers before we get into a couple of other things. Oh, no, actually, that's it. We'll backtrack a little bit and talk about Wednesday night. Chris Ludecki, appreciate the $5 from you. This SmackDown was good to your point because storytelling actually made sense, which is rare these days because normally everyone is booked as an idiot. That's very true. Tonight, they actually, did something that is a way to tell the Usos apart. And I'm glad that whoever's writing the shit thought enough to do that. Maybe it was the Usos themselves or Roman or maybe Paul Heyman, saying, do you really want these guys to share a brain? Isn't that what was a part of Jey Uso's promo a couple of weeks back when he says, people always ask me, which one are you? He wants to get away from that. So make these guys have, different personalities and feel different ways and have different feelings because they're different people. So that's good. That's actually one kind of little thing that they did in terms of storytelling that was good that they don't normally do. So, wow, are we giving WWE praise on this podcast? Right on. Zane G, thanks for the $5 with the Usos and Roman Reigns in the end. Do a rehash of Survivor Series 98 with the McMahons and The Rock coming in for a triple hug. That would be cool. You mean a Backlash, right? With Cesaro, you get something and they all stand there and then they kind of smile and, oh, yeah, that would be great. I guess Roman would be in the middle hugging them both. That would be kind of funny. That would be a little cute. If it was just two of them, I would reenact the Stephanie and Triple H Armageddon hug where Stephanie she's looking down and then she smirks and then she hugs Triple H. That was great. That camera shot of Stephanie smirking made that whole shot. I mean, it made the whole moment, really. So, that would be cool. It was a throwback show. They should have done that shit tonight. Would have been fun. Like when Cornette talks about politics. I don't like when Cornette talks about much, but I do like when he talks about politics. Well, it's also his podcast. He can kind of do whatever he wants. But you always got to notice that people who agree with your politics don't say, I wish you would stop talking about politics. It's only the people that disagree. I mean, if you're one of those people that have ever said that, I guarantee you have said that to someone who has opposite political beliefs than you, because you wouldn't agree with someone and then tell them not to talk about it. So it's always the opposite. So I don't really take too much stock in that opinion because you see it from everybody that's just butthurt. So I like Cornette's political opinions, but I agree if you have a wrestling podcast, you don't want to talk too much about it. But as we brought up the election and stuff, a couple months back, it's really hard to avoid shit like that, but otherwise, we do our best to stay out of it, unless fucking Cheeto Breath was up there saying something ridiculous, which was like every day, maybe I take a shot or two, but otherwise, wrestling podcast should be wrestling. We should be here to have fun and get away from all that nonsense, all that I get. But it's usually the people that are angry are the ones that are going to say that. But I love you, Ben. You're like one of my favorite people in here. You always got great shit to say. Let's get into Mr. Pillman. Mr. Pillman, we got to talk about this. Brian Pillman, Dark Side of the Ring episode, Season 3 debuted last night on Vice Channel. Now, they did give us a sneak peek of Part 1, first half of the show, on YouTube a couple days before, so I was able to check this out, and it basically got you all the way up to, I guess, signing with WWE after his car accident, and then it stopped. So we had to wait until last night to catch the full episode, and I watched it through, and yeah, it was crazy, man. There was a couple of things in here I wasn't aware of. I'm pretty educated in Brian Pillman history. I lived his whole career, and I remember it, and especially his death was one that has hit me hard. Now, I've talked about the Pillman death so many times over the years because one thing I've constantly repeated ever since 2010 when I did my very first video is that the Brian Pillman death opened the floodgates for deaths. I'm not saying he caused it, but he was the first one because his death was so shocking because prior to that, we had Eddie Gilbert, which was pretty shocking, Gino Hernandez, pretty shocking, Adrian Adonis, pretty shocking, Joey Morella, pretty shocking, the Von Erichs, super fucking shocking. But in terms of what was going on at the time in wrestling, a main star, regular roster member on TV with a pay-per-view match that day, dying like that was really kind of holy shit, especially when you see Vince McMahon talking about it on the free-for-all and they got to go out there and do a show. And he was the first ever 10-bell salute. Brian Pillman was the first person that they ever put all the talent up there, put his picture on the screen and did the 10 bells. First time they ever did that was Pillman. And that was a very traumatic experience for a 20-year-old wrestling fan like myself that thought Brian Pillman, despite his ankle, had a chance to maybe even contend for the world title. and he was about to be in this, finish off this big angle with Goldust. Marlena was going to turn heel and join with Brian Pillman. You could smell it. And, you felt like he had some potential in his future and the rest of his time in WWE, but behind the scenes, his personal life was a mess and everything was going down there. And he died on October 5th on that Bad Blood debut, the same night Kane debuted and all of that. So it was not fun to go back and relive that. But it was fun to look back at some of his early career, and they got into a lot of that, and that stuff was good. They talked about when he was a kid, all of the throat surgeries that he had, which we knew about. All sorts of great people were interviewed for this thing. Kim Wood was back, and Kim Wood is on that Brian Pillman DVD right there that they released back in like 2005 or 6 or something like that. That's a really good documentary. Now, it ain't as gnarly as this because it's not, it's not entitled Dark Side. They're trying to highlight Brian in a positive way. And a lot of the really, really gritty details that you hear about his life in Dark Side of the Ring, you're not going to hear about there, but you are going to get a pretty good look about his background and a lot of, how he came into the business. And Kim Wood was featured in that. He was back here to be interviewed, and he was a character. My God, Dave Meltzer was a big part of this. So was Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, among others, along with all three of Brian's kids, Danny, Brittany, and Brian Jr. And they did interview Melanie. Throwback Melanie. I was shocked when I saw her. I mean, I always knew that, she had problems and probably did a lot of drugs and stuff, but my God, have the drugs taken a toll on her? Man, sad and half infuriating at the same time, but we'll talk about Melanie. And I think the MVP of the episode has got to be Brian Pillman's sister, Linda, who seemed like she was there for him a lot. She was there for several things, like when Rochelle was attacked and stabbed, or I think when Rochelle killed herself, and when Brian Pillman had his accident, and she was always, kind of a glue in the family. And then it really touched me at the end of the documentary when she kind of revealed that she really works hard to make sure that all of the kids, because all of Brian's kids have different mothers. He has 3. I mean, technically he's got some stepkids too, technically 5, but 3 of his own, all with different mothers and different situations and a lot of bad blood. Brittany, Rochelle's daughter, hates Melanie. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, I wonder what the relationship is with the siblings. I mean, she can't stand Melanie. What's Brian's situation with Melanie? That's his mom. Obviously loves his mom, but he probably has some hard feelings towards her too. How is, are him and Brittany able to keep a close sibling relationship despite the fact that his sister hates his mom? What's that all like? And at the end of the piece, when they showed Linda kind of getting the kids together and they were all around the table looking at pictures and stuff, I got to commend all of Brian's kids for being able to have relationships with each other and not let the fucked up past that they were all unfortunate enough to be a part of damage that and hold it against each other. They even showed at the very end, Brian, hanging out with his mom, who clearly Brittany hates, and the fact that I can't even imagine. I mean, I have a half sister, and a full sister. I couldn't imagine if the situations were with one of our parents, or there was hatred or anything like that there. I don't know how it would go, and how that would be for a sibling. So as I'm watching the documentary, I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering that in my head. I'm like, God, I wonder, they're all being interviewed here, but they all seem to be in different places. Do they all get along? So at the end of it, when I kind of saw them all together, I'm like, that provides me a little bit of comfort to know that Brian, sees that. And, hopefully he's like, well, his kids are all adults and they're being strong through all this. They all have good hearts, and, the fact that they can all coexist is really cool. So I think Linda deserves a lot of credit. She's the MVP of that family, and she deserves to go in the Hall of Fame, if nothing else, for kind of keeping all that together and keeping Brian Pillman's memory alive, which his kids also do a great job of. Despite all of Brian's faults, every single one of his kids said that he was a great dad and that he loved him and he was there for him. The other situations like we'll talk about that went on with Rochelle and Melanie and Brian's, promiscuous lifestyle, the drug use, things like that. All those were there, but all of his kids remember him fondly, and that's good. I'm glad, that obviously Brittany had mentioned in the documentary that she does have some anger towards him, but, they still love their dad. And that was all kind of comforting at the end of that. But, to get to that point at the end was kind of some rocky road there, and they got into some serious shit. So they talked about his early, days, his early life, the throat operations, and then, playing football and Cincinnati Bengals and going to Calgary and all that. Got just caught up to speed on how all that took place. And then when he was up there and got injured and decided to go to the Hart family camp and learn how to wrestle, and broke in back then in the Stampede days. And I remember when I got my first tapes of Pillman in Stampede, because I've told the story a bunch of times. When I first started getting into tape trading, probably around like 97, 98, 99, I traded for some Stampede stuff. And a lot of what I was targeting was Bret Hart and Dynamite Kid from back in the day. But I got this like giant set to where it had like a lot of like Chris Benoit matches and Owen Hart matches and Brian Pillman matches. It was very cool. So that was kind of my first, that's as far back as I was able to see him. I never saw anything prior to that on Pillman. But back in WCW, he was like, when he got there in like 89 and 90, he was like one of their top baby faces. Everybody knew who Flying Brian was. I lived in the South. I lived in North Carolina at the time. And I remember the kids that watched wrestling. Yes, WWE was the big time, Hulk Hogan and all of that and Ric Flair and whatever. But you heard Flying Brian's name a lot. I heard Flying Brian's name from non-wrestling fans. I remember one of my friend's sisters, we were watching wrestling and she came down. She was, "Is that Flying Brian?" And we were like, "No, it's not Flying Brian." But she's like, "Oh," she just knew the name. She just saw two guys in the ring. "Is that Flying Brian?" And so he was, he was over his shit. He got great reactions from the crowd and all that stuff. So they chronicled all that. His tag team was Steve Austin. Very cool to see Stone Cold on this thing, talking about the chain, that Brian gave him. And I remember he wore that forever. He'd wear that on Raw so often and shit. So it was cool to see him on there. But with all the lighthearted stuff, they also, had to get a little bit dark and talk about his personal life and how he had, multiple girlfriends. And I guess it was when he was with Rochelle, who got pregnant with Brittany. While she was pregnant with Brittany, Brian had already had a previous relationship and had a daughter, Danny. But her mom didn't let Brian know about it until a couple of years. And then when she did, Brian found out he had another daughter. And then he was cheating on Rochelle with Melanie, who they showed footage of the wedding and all of that. And talked about how they met, and then Melanie was, fucking crazy. And then he got with her. She was pregnant with little Brian. And then, they were all kind of living together. And then there became a custody battle with Rochelle. And Brian and Melanie had all the money and they were threatening her. And that horrible story that Brittany told about how her mom showed up to say hi to her and she gave her a hug. And then Brian came out and there was like a tug of war with the kid and screaming and just fucking white trash heaven, And the poor kid had to fucking go through that, and to live with that memory has got to be so hard. And, Rochelle, fell into a lot of depression because I can't remember. Did they say that Brian got custody or they were about to or whatever? It was looking dark for her because, after that attempted kidnapping thing, I think it was, that Brian got the kid. And Melanie was a big part of that because she was egging Brian on and she was the one kind of pushing for this a lot. And she didn't like Melanie. She didn't like Rochelle. Linda said that, Melanie didn't like anybody talking to Brian. This is the mother of one of his kids. He's going to have contract with her. Then, of course, I hate to say it, but women are crazy, and Melanie was probably very territorial and she was probably doing everything she could in her power to ruin Rochelle. And she drove her so damn crazy that she ended up committing suicide. Shot herself. And, this contradicted what was said in the DVD, because I remember in the DVD, Melanie is on there too. She looks a lot less tore back than she does in this. I think at the time of this DVD, she was remarried to apparently what was a pretty big douchebag, a dickhead stepfather for Brian Jr., according to him. I think that's when that was filmed. And in that, she did mention Rochelle, but I thought she had said something along the lines of, that Brittany was kind of like her daughter, like her, like she had kind of adopted her. And maybe that was the case when Brittany was little. They even told the story of Brian's funeral, how all the little girls are running around screaming and having a good time and stuff. So maybe she was too little, to understand how responsible Melanie was for what happened to her mom. And maybe the relationship was good at first, but then as Brittany grew older and became an adult and learned what happened, then it broke up. But whatever, in the DVD, Melanie makes it sound like their relationship is good and she's kind of like her stepmom now. I guess that's not the case. So when Brittany started saying Melanie's a piece of shit and she deserves everything she got and she's a drug addicted asshole, I'm like, oh, whoa. It's that's not what I thought. I knew Melanie and, and everything that went on with Rochelle and her suicide. I knew about that and I knew that she was probably driven to that. But I didn't realize that Brittany's kind of aware of what happened, you know, and we say bad things about Melanie, and there's very little redeeming qualities about her. Even back in the day, you know, she was a street dancer, probably just on her. She was an exotic dancer, and Brian met her, and she was, you know, probably lived a wild lifestyle, probably been doing drugs her whole life, and it showed. Girl's missing a tooth, you know, and she just looks like she's been on meth for the past 25 years. Unbelievable. But with that being said, she was honest, and she owned it, and she did not shy away. She certainly didn't try to pretend, you know, that she didn't look like, you know, she'd been doing crack for 2 decades. She owned up to her, you know, mistakes. She feels extremely guilty about what happened to Rochelle. She expressed the desire to make it up to the kids, which I don't think, based on Brittany's demeanor in this thing, that's ever going to happen. Brittany says that she's living the life that she deserves right now because nobody likes her, and, you know, she's ruined her life with drugs and alienated everybody, and is probably living a pretty rotten life of depression herself. Made mention that Melanie has taken all of Brian's royalties that she gets, you know, annually every year, and none of his kids ever saw any of that money. And she spent it on drinking and partying, and Melanie kind of was like, yeah, I kind of did. So, I mean, at least Melanie's honest. At least she's not trying to bullshit herself or us. And she's owning it. And part of you wants to respect that, but part of you is like, come on, get your shit together, man. So it was disturbing to see her on there because, you know, think about back in the day, she was pretty. You know, when she was on the Gun episode, you know, when she was standing there with Brian, of course, she had the big, giant, you know, metal band hair. But she, you know, looked like someone that hadn't just been on drugs for a bunch of years yet. And to see how such a beautiful person, you know, can become so unbeautiful due to putting that shit in your body, it sucks, man. And I think, you know, and if the kids, especially Brian, you know, really suffered for this. And he got into some pretty graphic details here later on after we would talk about Brian's death. But very cool stuff talking about Brian's contract status back in the day, because I remember the hotlines and shit when Brian was starting to kind of fly off the rails a little bit in WCW, kind of doing this loose cannon thing, doing the Booker Man shit. And then you hear about his release. And I think he was even turned up in the crowd on WCW after his release. So a lot of that stuff was happening. And I remember the hotlines and shit really were a little bit confused, but they were speculating that he's working everybody and he'll probably turn up in ECW or something like that. I remember that speculation taking place. I loved the story about him, or how they kind of classified it as him manipulating Eric Bischoff to get a release. Now, Kim Wood takes an awful lot of credit for this. In the story here, he says that, you know, what you got to do is increase your value, because Brian had a lot of kids and his contract was coming up for renegotiation or something, and he wanted more money and Bischoff couldn't give it to him. So Kim Wood kind of convinces Brian to kind of play both sides against each other and, you know, try to convince Eric, because of this work and because of this crazy, kooky, loose cannon character, to give him his release, like a legitimate release. He's like, because you don't understand, if I talk to Dave, it's got to be real. It's got to be real. So they made it sound like Brian manipulated Eric to get a release, when really I think the intent was, according to Eric Bischoff, who's also on this, by the way, that he intended to get released so he could go to WWE, build himself up, and come back for more money. And I remember when, after Brian Pillman died in the following years, there were a lot of people in shoot interviews that said Brian Pillman wanted to go back. At the time of his death, he was wanting to go back to WCW. So Bischoff kind of verifies this a little bit, saying, wow, Brian Pillman, because Pillman was really out of place in WWE. It is a little bit weird that he died there, because he was only there a year, you know, prior to his death, a little bit, maybe a year and a half total, but he was off TV a lot with surgeries and shit. So, you know, on TV and a presence on TV, it was only about a year. So for him to die under their umbrella and not WCW's was a little weird, and especially when you hear about him only using WWE as a way to get to more money in WCW, feeling that WCW was the better place for him. All of that got verified here in Dark Side of the Ring. I had heard that throughout the years, but was surprised when I heard it. I'm like, oh, I thought Brian Pillman liked being in WWE. I thought he liked being a part of the Hart Foundation. I thought, you know, I loved Brian Pillman being there. Had he not got hurt, or had he not gotten hurt, and he would have been healthy coming in the door and being able to, you know, be, you know, the athletic star that he was before, I would have loved to see like a 97 Shawn and a 97 Pillman. go at it, especially like on the mic. You know, Shawn's so edgy and badass and old school. He might be slightly better than Pillman on the mic per se, but he ain't as badass and he ain't as crazy. And Shawn Michaels would have met his match with this guy because there ain't no way he'd let Shawn talk to him like that, and he would beat the fuck out of him. So I would have loved to see those two, like a healthy Pillman, a healthy Shawn. You talk about a clash. Shawn, of course, politically would have buried the guy back behind the scenes, and Vince would have chosen Shawn over Bryan 100%, and Bryan would have gotten beat, but it would have been cool, you know, to see the two of them in the ring together, you know, kind of having that back and forth, and, you know, Bryan just being, you know, the hardcore fans would be 100% behind Bryan. And I thought that would have been a cool storyline to see, or a cool program between the two, but it was not to be. But leading up to all of that, you know, Bischoff kind of verifies that stuff, and apparently the you know, the intent here is for Bryan to leave, work in WWE for a couple years, come back to WCW where he can be paid that big money. So he gets the release. He then turns up in ECW, and I remember when he turned up there, that was awesome. That was all over the place, and the fans knew it. You know, even the crowd, even the fans in the arena that night knew that he was going to be there. And then when he showed up and they all popped, he turned around and heeled on him on the mic. That was fucking awesome. So you knew he was going to show up there, and it was only a matter of time before he'd hop over to WWE. But then the accident happened, and he had that Hummer, and he fell asleep at the wheel because he's taken a ton of pills and shit, and somas or whatever, muscle relaxers, fell asleep, flipped the thing, apparently got tossed from the vehicle, you know, 50 yards or whatever it was, and flipped in the air, and all sorts of crazy shit, landed, smashed his face to hell, and just completely destroyed his ankle. Now, remember when I heard about the injury, I mean, they were pretty graphic here in detail, how they talked about how his face had to be reconstructed, peeling his scalp back. This is Brutus Beefcake shit here, you know, and how the way they describe these injuries, and the fact that Beefcake and Brian Pillman both remain good-looking dudes after this. I mean, when Beefcake, you know, he had all that stuff done, but he didn't have a mangled face afterwards. He pretty much looked the same. So the fact that they were able to put Bryan back together without all these crazy scars and these crushed bones and these out-of-place eyeballs and stuff, like the fact that he was able to come back together, it's medicine, fucking doctors are amazing, man. But the biggest issue there, not only his face, was what happened to his ankle. And his ankle just got completely shattered to where they even had to talk about amputation. So they put everything back together with steel rods and screws all in his ankle and his leg, to where they were even sticking out of the skin during his recovery. And of course, his face was all banged up. His kids described, you know, them seeing and interacting with their dad and how it kind of freaked them out, you know, how messed up he was. And at this time, this is in between his contracts, you know, but Vince, and it was so crazy when they signed him, you know, they signed him anyway. WWE, it was that, you know, that, as Cornette put it, that burgeoning Monday Night War. And they wanted to ensure that they could get everybody they could, because at that time when Pillman came in, they were losing guys. Pillman came in like right before or after WrestleMania 12, and Hall and Nash were leaving. They were gone. A lot of other guys were gone too. Even Warrior would be taken off. So they were losing a ton. I think Vince felt that, you know, he didn't want to lose this guy. He didn't want to potentially lose Brian Pillman, especially since Brian is kind of, you know, kayfabing the injury a little bit, not being totally honest about how fucked up he really is. And I think they're thinking he can get back in the ring and just be a name for them, because as we've talked about a lot, and as we will talk about on Sunday in the King of the Ring 1996 review, WWE and WCW had swapped rosters around this time. Now Hogan and Savage and Hall and Nash and Piper and Perfect and guys and Brett and shit, or not Brett yet, we're all in WCW, while in WWE, Johnny B. Bad, Dustin Rhodes, Cactus Jack, Vader, Stunning Steve Austin, all these guys were now in, as Sid, were all in WWE. It was like a little talent swap there. So Pillman coming in, I thought made a lot of sense. And then he went nuts in the contract signing with Gorilla Monsoon and J.J. Dillon and all that stuff. They didn't show that on the documentary, but after Pillman so graciously signed his contract, he goes nuts in the contract signing there. And then we're going to talk about this on Sunday. They showed it here in the documentary, the little brush by that the two guys had, Steve Austin and Brian Pillman at the King of the Ring. I thought that was great. Watched that live on pay-per-view. I'm like, the Hollywood Blondes, check them out. They're looking at each other. And Pillman's great promo that night. So they covered a lot of that stuff here and about how fucked up he was. And then they got into the injury angle they did with Austin, you know, attacking Brian Pillman, Pillmanizing his ankle. First time we ever saw that spot done with the chair was in that, and that was on Super. That wasn't even on Raw. That was on Superstars when Austin beat up Bryan. So they got into a lot of his WWE run there, but talked about that when he did finally come back and get in the ring. And I remember that was like the summer of '97. He had a match on Raw with Steve Austin. They had like a brawl backstage at King of the Ring, and Austin gave him a swirly at King of the Ring. And I think he was in the Intercontinental title tournament as well. I think he faced Owen Hart, and they kind of had like a fake match against each other. I remember that. And then he had the feud with Goldust that was at SummerSlam that involved wearing the dress. And then they had the match, I think it was at Ground Zero, where Marlena was on the line, and Brian Pillman beat Goldust and took possession of Marlena for 30 days. And then they were set to have a rematch at In Your House Bad Blood, from what I understand, the plan there was for Pillman to beat Goldust, because Goldust had beat him at SummerSlam, then Pillman won. I think Pillman was going to, at the next one, then Pillman was going to win the blow-off. And I think the plan was for Marlena to turn on Goldust, join with Pillman, that would transform Goldust into more of that Dustin Rhodes character that they would still wind up doing after Pillman died, when they brought him together and did that series of like sit-down interviews with Dustin and Mick Foley and maybe someone else. So that was all a part of that, and that's such a weird fucking time. So now, we've pretty much covered everything up until, his death, and now we get to Bad Blood. And to hear Bruce Prichard, another person who was interviewed for this, and Jim Cornette retell this. Cornette was pretty consistent with what I've heard him tell in interviews before. He was the one that I guess had sought out to try to track down Bryan when it was realized he was extremely late for the pay-per-view, and he ended up calling the hotel. And when he asked about Pillman, they put him on hold, and they came back and they said, Brian Pillman's dead. And he kind of told somebody, go get Bruce right fucking now. Brian Pillman's dead. And, to hear Cornette tell that again, and to see him get choked up about it, to this day, how long it's been for him to retell that story and to really struggle to get through it. It was crazy. And I remember, me and my buddy Daniel were watching this shit. I think I was going to his house or something like that, and it was announced on the Free For All. I think like on the fucking preview channel, that blue scrolling crawl, that you would have watched pay-per-views back in the day. And Vince makes that announcement there. And like I said earlier, it was kind of like my first introduction to like a major death like that. After that, it became commonplace. Owen Hart, Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, Davey Boy Smith, Crash Holly, Miss Elizabeth, Hawk, the list just goes on and on. Big Boss Man, everybody, just day after day, people were dying left and right. It all started here with Bryan. So to have to retell that story about how they found out he passed away and that he was found, dead in his bed. I remember that very passionate, shoot style promo Cornette did on Raw about Phil Mushnick, who wrote an article about Brian Pillman, talking about, substance abuse and everything in wrestling, and really fired back hard on Mushnick in a classic fucking interview. But Brian and Jim Cornette were really, really good friends. So, to hear him retell this was rough. Like Jim Cornette or not, I certainly don't agree with literally anything he says about AEW. I think he does it for the views and the enraged little psychos that have so much pent up anger that they live to hear that stuff and they literally jack off to it. He's doing it for them. So it's nice to see that he actually does have a heart in there. And, retelling that was probably pretty hard for him because of the relationship with Bryan and, the whole situation there. So that was when I realized, I thought it was going to be easier to get through this, and so the way they kind of wrapped up the story with Bryan's kids, to me at least, wrapped up everything well. I think it's got to be tough for all of them. They're all dealing with a lot. There's a lot of baggage here, and there's a lot of, there's probably just a lot of emotion just wrapped up in all of this, so that's why I said earlier, what made me so happy about the end of this was when, kind of Linda is the one that kind of keeps this family together and gets them together and tries to ensure that these siblings don't drift apart and, maintain good relationships. And it seems like they have. And Bryan is even, Bryan was on the documentary talking about his relationship with his mother and how he's, trying to at least have a relationship with her, and he's trying to get over some of the issues he had. So they're trying to do the right thing here, which is good. Apparently things are really hard for Bryan Jr. as well. I was not aware. I knew that Melanie remarried. I remember hearing about it when Melanie remarried. But I had no idea that this guy is apparently some sort of a douchebag that abused Brian. I don't know why or what the motivation would be for Brian to lie here. So I'm going to take him at face value. They mentioned in the documentary that they reached out to the former stepdad and he declined to do the interview. Brian Jr. accused him of physically, not only mentally, but physically and verbally abusing him, which sucks because when you hear about that, it makes your blood boil. Because I don't know who the stepdad is, but I'll guarantee you right now. Imagine what little Brian was probably thinking. If my dad was here, you would be so fucked. You know, Brian Pillman's a tough dude, you know. That wouldn't fly. I mean, I bet you Brian dreamt of that every day. You know, if my dad was here, he would fuck this guy up. So if this stepfather, whatever his fucking name is, if he was abusing Brian Jr. like that, that's absolutely inexcusable. And, it goes with the territory of when you have a drug addicted mother, you know, she's not exactly going to be marrying, saints. She's probably going to be, mixing it up with some unsavory people and some pretty big assholes that aren't good for kids and shit. So seems to me that all the kids are relatively well adjusted. Brittany seems like to be the one with the most issues. Danny seems to have it together just fine. And Brian Jr. is, of course, attempting to have a career in professional wrestling. He works for AEW. He's done an absolutely marvelous job of emulating his father's look and his father's style. He looks exactly like him. And I think we all need to root for him because so far so good. He was, I noticed him in MLW. I'm like, holy shit. He looks a lot like nobody can duplicate Brian Pillman Senior, but Brian Jr. is doing it pretty well, and he's got that mullet down. He's got that look. You can see Brian in his face, and that is, as a fan for me and somebody who remembers literally everything about Brian Pillman's career, that makes me happy. And and that's another thing that Cornette mentioned on this episode as well, about Pillman Jr. carrying on his father's legacy and how he wishes him the best. And I'm like, man, how can you be on your fucking podcast and say the shit that you say about AEW when you claim to love Brian Pillman so much? How can you so harshly and so negatively and so angrily root against a place for Brian Pillman's son to get a job and to be in the business and make money and to make a living? I don't think Brian Pillman, your friend, would be too happy with the way you're shitting on this promotion, a North American promotion that is able to give wrestlers a place to work other than Vince. Only the biggest assholes walking this earth could find problems with that, find negativity there. That's a good thing. So it amazes me how Cornette can be here crying about Brian Pillman, wishing Junior the best when he completely shits on the show that Junior works on every week just to please his audience. For no other reason, just to please his audience who need that negativity in their life to survive, who need to hear that to ejaculate every morning and get on with their day. That's disturbing above anything else, for me with this documentary, is to hear Cornette be two different people here. But anyway, all in all, really good documentary, tough to watch, and I put it right up there with Owen and Benoit. Those are the three big ones so far on Dark Side of the Ring. We have Nick Gage coming up next week. I only know that, but I'm not sure the order of the other ones. We got Chris Kanyon on this list. We got The Plane Ride from Hell. We got Ultimate Warrior. We got lots of others. There's going to be some good episodes this season, but they opened it up with the biggest one here, and, there you go. There's my opinion on the Dark Side of the Ring. So anyway, I'll cruise back over to the chat now, knock out some more of these super chats, see what's going on. Keep smashing that thumbs up button if you will. Doesn't look like we've had that big of an audience tonight, which is kind of a bummer, but I appreciate y'all that are here now. Let me get back up to where I was so I can knock out some questions. Zane G, did you check out the Big E24? Yes, I did. That was out a few weeks back. Watched that. That was good stuff. Really loved the weight room bit with Cena, and you saw Roman and Moxley and all those guys there. That was cool. Yeah, Slim Jim. Pillman used to wear those Bengals tights back in WCW. Very cool. Yeah, Pillman is your fourth favorite in the early 90s after Sting and the Steiners. I was a WCW kid. Yeah, I was a WWF kid, but I lived in WCW country, so I was aware of WCW, and I watched it on Saturday nights at 6:05 pretty regularly, but not as regularly as WWE. Went to a WCW house show in 1990, 89 or 90. Yeah, so fun shit, man. Pillman was recognizable. People knew who he was. Ladies loved him. because he was an absolute stud, and there's so few of us. What do I think is worse, being in catering, waiting for an opportunity with the IWC love, or being someone like Corbin, talented, isn't bad, but their character and story are garbage? I'd rather be on TV among anything else. As long as I'm on TV, I'd prefer that. Yeah, I like Corbin. I think Corbin can come through in his matches. I don't like his face any more than anybody else does, but I'm a little more realistic with my Corbin criticisms because he delivers. Yeah, and Melanie's been in and out of jail, not surprisingly. Every single thing she's been in jail for, I'm sure, have been drug-related charges and probation and fucking that up and, not just being able to stay off the drugs, My God. Yeah, and there was Brian. I have some of those Brian Pillman videos on those Brian Pillman tribute shows on video. I tape traded for some of them, and they would do those memorial shows, and a lot of talent would come in to benefit the family, and she probably kept all that money for herself. The fact that those kids saw none of that is fucking disturbing. That's really tough to really have any sympathy at all for Melanie, which I don't really. I want to for Brian Jr., But she's not my mom. She's his mom, so I can judge her like normal. And she's a pretty scummy thing that she did, all for drugs. And just perfect example of how drugs can really take a hold of you and just control your entire life. So say no to drugs, kids. Otherwise, you will turn out like Melanie Pillman, and you don't want that, do you? I don't want that for you. Oh, yeah, Fitness Night 27. Thanks for the $2. Jake Roberts will be the darkest. Yeah, as dark as Pillman's is, Jake's darker. That's going to infuriate me. I'm going to want to bring back Grizzly Smith from the grave and beat the fuck out of him with a tire iron. I'm loving Ted DiBiase and Cameron Grimes. Isaac, absolutely love that. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I have no doubt that Melanie was probably, maybe already seeing him and stuff. Yeah, just fucked up. Dre L, good to see you, man. Appreciate the 5 from you. I'm going to Dynamite Wednesday. What match are you looking forward to the most? Yeah, we're going to talk about that right now. Let's follow up a little bit on Blood and Guts from this past week. Of course, I was up here yesterday talking about the finish and the crash pad controversy and all that nonsense. So we were up here yesterday talking about that. In terms of next week, though, we've got... Where do I have the matches? We've got Miro and Darby Allin for the TNT title next week. I can't believe they're doing this match already, but I think Miro's got to win that, especially with Darby being thrown off the stairs there. So that one, I think I'm looking forward to most. I think Orange Cassidy and Pac is going to be good. That's a number 1 contenders match. Winner faces Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing. But based on what they did at Blood and Guts, they basically telegraphed this. I feel like Cassidy's going to win this match based on what they did with him and Kenny Omega. Otherwise, what was the point of all that? If Cassidy comes out and has that whole thing with Omega and then Pac wins, it'd be weird. So I think it's going to be Cassidy. They probably want, that makes more sense too, because he's a babyface and he's an extremely over babyface. And Double or Nothing, according to Tony Khan and AEW, is going to be running at full capacity. So there's going to be a big audience there for that. And a heel versus heel championship main event is probably not the direction I'd go in. So I feel like it's going to be Cassidy there. I don't know. I'm probably looking forward to Miro and Darby a little bit more. Just because I want to see if Miro just squashes the shit out of him. I just want to see if Miro puts him down in like 10 seconds, because Darby's kind of vowing to be at the show no matter what. They might not clear him or might not clear him. Maybe that's why they ran that angle. And next week, the match can't happen and it's postponed and Miro gets pissed or something. They could drag it out a little bit. But if Darby hobbles his broken ass into the ring and he tries to face, this maniac, he's going to get killed. So we'll see. But in terms of what else happened on Blood and Guts last week, I'll just talk about a couple of matches real quick. First of all, they drew a 1.09 million. So that's a very, very positive rating. They're keeping it over 1 million every week. They didn't go over 1 million when they were head to head with the president's congressional address or whatever, but that's, kind of a asterisk. So provided there's nothing crazy going head to head with them, they're drawing 1 million viewers every week so far. That's good. And they did the same here. They were also number 1 on cable for the first time in that key 18 to 49 demo, and number 1 among all the 150 top original cable shows out there. So that's really encouraging and really promising numbers for AEW. That's great. No way you can spin that any other way than great. So if you're an AEW hater, go fuck yourself, because that's good news. Cody Rhodes defeated QT Marshall, kind of in that grudge match there. Cody put him down rather easily, but this allowed Anthony Ogogo to get into the ring and knock Cody out with one of his very strong punches. So we'll see with him if Cody is used as a way to kind of get this guy over, because he's got he's got potential to maybe be a big homegrown AEW star with all of his legit experience and stuff that he has. They could build their Brock Lesnar out of this guy. We'll see. Not much happened in that Kenny Omega Nakazawa versus Moxley and Kingston match. Omega kind of walked out there, but he'd be back later with the promo with Tony Schiavone, which I love because they had the cage lowered, the lights were dimmed, Schiavone looked badass with his earring, and he's interviewing Omega. That was cool, and he announced that next week it's going to be Pac versus Orange Cassidy. The winner faces Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing. So Kenny, I guess, kind of has a problem with that or something. That's when Orange Cassidy comes out and Kenny makes fun of him. Like, you're in this match, and basically just talks all sorts of shit on him, demeaning him, not considering him really a big threat, calling him a child, shit like that. Then they turned out to be a brawl. I think they fight with each other a little bit or whatever. So that whole segment there, to me, told me that they're kind of telegraphing the winner here, and that it's likely going to be Orange Cassidy, because if Double or Nothing is running at full capacity, why are you going to do Omega and Pac? I'd love to see that match. Don't get me wrong. Give it to me on Dynamite. Hell, give it to me in Double or Nothing. I don't care. But I think for the fans, it might be better for Cassidy in the babyface role going up against Omega. Because he's had some big wins. He's beat Jericho. I'm pretty sure that Cassidy and Pac are numbers like 1 and 2 in the rankings or whatever. So that match actually makes sense. And but in the end, I think Omega Cassidy makes for the better match at Double or Nothing. I think the crowd will be really into that, even more so than they would be Omega and Pac. So that's what I'm hoping for there. With those two, another glorious announcement on Dynamite this past week. It's official now, and I'm thrilled about it. Britt Baker will be challenging Hikaru Shida at Double or Nothing for the AEW Women's title. There you go. Britt Baker all the way. She does not lose this match. I've been wanting her to carry that title for a while. She's the best character that they have there. I think they can build the entire division around her and around her assholishness. And the second she got injured and became, became the way she was on the mic and kind of healed up, and the pulley system to Schiavone and all that stuff was just so incredible and terrific. And I love her, and I hope she beats Shida. It's time. It's time to beat Shida. She's been a great champion. 10 title defenses, 9, 10, something like that. She hasn't been super dominant, but she's had a healthy run. And so far, they haven't really had that title on a serious heel or a serious character. Not even Nyla Rose got that long with it. It went from Rio to Nyla to Shida. Baker is the best character they have there. She's their Charlotte. Maybe not totally Charlotte in the ring, but definitely Charlotte in overall persona and everything. I think she's their cornerstone. So I'd put the belt on Baker now, and I'm just predicting that right now off the bat, Baker over Shida at Double or Nothing. Like I mentioned earlier on, Darby got tossed down that flight of stairs, so that's going to compromise him, you would think, in his TNT title match next week versus Miro, and that's probably going to be the main event, because so far, every time Darby has defended the title, it's been in the main event. So we'll have to see if Sting's there as well to try to offer some assistance to him, but he is going to be up poo-poo creek without an oar, or however the saying goes, next week against Miro, and right now, I'm kind of rooting for Miro. And like I said, we talked about the Blood and Guts match the other night. A lot of fans were criticizing the crash pad bump, and I made it very clear yesterday that I didn't like the bump either, in terms of that it just didn't really look that impressive, and I think it could have been improved if they just would have done something like change the camera angle, maybe change the location of the crash pad, whatever. I was never, ever, ever, or never would say that I think Jericho should take a flat back bump off a cage onto concrete ever at his age, and nobody should be doing that. A 20-year-old shouldn't be doing that, much less a 50-year-old. I just think it could have been executed better to where it looked better on TV. That's all. They don't want to get in the habit of doing this because they already had that terrible ending to the barbed wire match, and then this one kind of got criticized a little bit too, which sucks because the match itself I thought was good. It told a story. I loved Sammy submitting at the end for Jericho, and even MJF pushing him off at the end was very good. The push looked lame though. He just walked up and kind of gave him a little. They needed to just make it look a little better. That's really my only critique with it, is that I wished it looked a little better. I didn't think anybody should take any unnecessary risks or land on actual concrete or anything like that. I just wish it was pulled off in a way to where it looked a little more real and it didn't look like he was falling on a mattress. So I pretty much feel the same way there, but I'm not going to let that take away from the match. I thought it was very good, and I thought the finish was fantastic. The idea of the finish was, maybe the execution wasn't great, but the idea was great, with Inner Circle kind of their hands being forced there. I probably would have kept him in the cage and kept the cage locked, had him submit from inside. But other than that, the story there, doing the Fall Brawl 97 finish, I thought was pretty good. And the closing shots with a very, very bloody MJF saying thank you to Jericho and standing up on the cage victorious by himself was a very good looking visual there, and I thought was a good way to close out the show. So I thought they did a good job in their version of a War Games match. Sucks that they had to call it Blood and Guts. I wish they could call it War Games. It was Dusty's idea. I don't think there was too much blood in this. I saw that criticism as well. Some people, and even including WWE, felt there was too much blood. I don't really feel that way. I feel like these matches should have blood. If anything, NXT matches don't have enough blood because they don't do anything there. So it's like AEW has too much, NXT doesn't have any at all. There needs to maybe be a medium in between. I think in a match like this, a lot of guys are eager to blade, so they all want to do it kind of thing, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, but these matches are supposed to be brutal. The ones back in the day, man, are fucking gnarly, man. Everybody was busted open in those, so it's kind of par for the course, goes with the territory here. If you're going to have a blood and guts match, you're probably going to have to see some blood and maybe some guts too. So overall, I thought the show was pretty good. I'll probably wrap up a couple of thoughts here before we go on NXT as well. But let me knock out some more super chats. A very generous $20 drop is here from Zane G. I appreciate that, man, very much. Going back to Andrade, he had a meet and greet last weekend in Huntington Park that I was supposed to be a part of, but was shut down by cops. An outsider snitched, and then authorities were called only for it to get shut down. Well, they were doing that illegally? What is wrong with Andrade? They didn't set that up properly in the proper way to where cops wouldn't have to come shut it down? What kind of black market fucking meet and greets are going on there, Andrade? You know what I hope? One thing I've noticed about Andrade that I didn't really know before, he's mouthy. He's Mr. Chatterbox. He likes to talk about shit he probably shouldn't say. And, there's even some lost in translation moments there too, maybe a little bit with his English. But when he was first released and he was talking about Charlotte and her surgeries, and I'm like, bro, you shut up. So I feel like he's somebody that's just going to say crazy shit and do crazy shit. So I hope that he's not going to, because I like Andrade. I think he's a fantastic wrestler. I think he's world championship material, but maybe behind the scenes a little more nuts. I hope he's not a bad influence on Charlotte. I hope that he's not somebody that's I don't think he's gonna do to Charlotte what Alberto Del Rio did to Paige. I don't think it's to that degree. I don't think this guy's a drug addicted and alcoholic or anything, or abusive in any way. I think he's just doesn't think before he speaks too much. Maybe doesn't have too much of a filter and could wind up causing Charlotte some problems internally with WWE. Maybe the fans love that. Maybe they hope this relationship turns into an episode of fucking some crazy Teen Mom or something on MTV, and it's just filled with drama and nonsense and batshit crazy stuff, and it forces WWE to maybe not feature Charlotte as much. Fans would probably be into that, but I worry about him. I worry about that he's going to bring Charlotte down just a tad. I could be wrong. I just feel like, and she's so in love with him. Like every post, she's all over him and shit. And I'm like, man, don't get sucked into his shit. If he's got, if he's got things that can cause problems, don't be a part of that, Charlotte. Think better of it. It ain't worth it, girl. Anyway, appreciate that very much, Zane, from you. And I want to talk a little bit about NXT as well before we get out of here. Where'd my notes go? There we go. So yeah, NXT this past Tuesday, I didn't get a chance to look at the show at all until yesterday. and I really liked it. Now, they're kind of quietly doing their own thing on Tuesdays. They don't seem to be too concerned with the ratings. They're getting their asses kicked. They drew 761,000 this week, so AEW is far outperforming NXT. However, I think NXT is giving us equally as good wrestling shows. The ratings might not be reflecting that, but as a fan, it's kind of nice to see NXT back like sort of in their groove. There's no longer a worry or a concern about what the other show's doing head to head. You don't have to stack your show against theirs. You don't have to book your show as a reaction to what they're doing, which I'm not saying NXT was doing that, but they probably were doing that sometimes, and if AEW's got a big match on the horizon, they try to book one too. So the fact that that's all out of the picture now, they can concentrate on their own shit, and that's probably a good thing. And the show now feels like it's got a lot less of that, that just redundant nonsense that you get on Raw and SmackDown so much. It actually has a feel, and there's stories, and there's great matches here. So there were a few things on the show I wanted to mention that I really liked. I liked the stuff with Karrion Kross when he came out there with the title, started cutting a promo, who's interrupted by Kyle O'Reilly. I think I'm going to start dressing like Kyle O'Reilly and see what happens. What do you guys think will happen if I just walk out on the street wearing that? Probably get some looks. So O'Reilly is out first, makes it known that he wants a shot at that title. I'd love to see O'Reilly and Kross. Pete Dunne follows out, says the same thing, followed by Finn Balor, who wants the same thing. So Kross has got a lot of challengers right now. I'm not sure how they're going to really rectify that. I'm assuming Balor will probably get another shot, or they might do some sort of a triple threat with O'Reilly, Kross, and Balor. Maybe Bryan can come in and work with Pete Dunne. We'll have to wait and see. We had a big brawl that ensued. Balor hit Kross first, and they start fighting, and Kross disposes of everybody. He gets rid of Balor, and he gets rid of Pete Dunne and Kyle O'Reilly as well. And then he's attacked from behind by the way, Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. I guess next week on NXT, Kross is going to face Austin Theory one-on-one. So he's attacked by Gargano and Theory, which is weird, and they lay him out. And that's how the segment ends, with Gargano in Theory standing over Karrion Kross. So since Karrion Kross has a match next week with Austin Theory, and since Gargano stuck his nose in Kross's business now and hit him with a super kick to the face, do you think it would be weird if they did this, but do you think they might be setting up here for Kross to do what Keith Lee did? Do you think they're setting up a match here with Gargano to where maybe he's going to take the North American title from him and be a double champion? But that would be weird, because if he did that, he would just surrender the title just like Keith Lee did. He forfeited the North American title, and they did the tournament, which I think is how Johnny won it. So I think, or maybe not. So yeah, I think he did. And then he dropped it to Ruff and then got it back, I think is how that went down. So with them even being involved here, the fact that they're heels, it seems strange that they're, I guess, is Kross a heel or not. I guess he is. I don't know. It just seemed like they would be involved here. So it made me wonder if maybe they're planting a seed for Gargano and Kross, for Kross to beat him and be a double champion. But I don't know how that would work. If it didn't work with Keith Lee, why win a belt just to give it back? Probably wouldn't even do that, but it might. It made me wonder. Speaking... Yeah, there you go. Go, Dre, going to turn into an episode of 90 Day Fiancé. That's funny. Speaking of championships, we have new NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. Indi Hartwell and Candice LeRae beat Shotzi and Ember Moon in a fantastic street fight, which was really good. Good stuff throughout that match. Candice even gets the fall, hitting the wicked stepsister. I forgot on which one. I think on Shotzi for the win. And that's really awesome for Candice LeRae. Candice LeRae has worked her ass off. She's a long-time veteran now. She's been in the business a while and in WWE for a few years now. For her to finally get championship gold is long overdue, and it's earned. And she's had some NXT women's title shots in the past before and fallen short. Everybody loves Candice. She's hilarious. Very happy for her. And we'll have to go back in history and check how many times we've had husband and wife pairings as champions in WWE. You know, it's happened a couple times, but that's pretty cool that Candice and Indi won the titles there. I really like Indi Hartwell. She caught my eye in that whole Dexter Lumis stuff. I thought the Way was a perfect little faction for her. It's made me pay more attention to and appreciate her character, and I think she's funny. And I like her a lot, and I'm happy with that title change. I feel like we got a little hot potatoing going on with that very short-lived championship, but how can you complain about Candice LeRae winning a title? in WWE. You can't. Holy shit, was that Falls Count Anywhere match good between Leon Ruff and Isaiah Swerve Scott. I didn't realize how good Isaiah Swerve Scott has been getting. This new attitude of his, these promos, these very interestingly shot promos that they have with him, with his shit talking and his unbelievable competence is really great. And I think he's really just kind of finding his niche with his personality, with this character. And so is Leon Ruff, but Swerve Scott especially. You know, he actually has like a personality that I didn't know was there, that I never noticed before. Seen a bunch of his matches, even seen him in a backstage interview or two, but didn't realize he had, you know, the charisma that he does. Just great confidence, great demeanor overall. Really love him. Fun stuff all through this match. I think my favorite spot was the toolbox throw when he pulled out the big toolbox from under the ring. And he threw it 100 miles an hour at Leon Ruff, who just barely got out of the way and let out a big facial expression there. The toolbox would come back into play later. They pull a wrench out of there and use it as a weapon a couple of times. But the finish was interesting because Ruff hits him with a couple of cutters and then kind of him out over the barricade around the ringside area. And he climbs up to that scaffolding in that staging area or whatever. And he's about to dive off onto Scott. But when he dives, he lands onto AJ Francis. And I forgot about it. I kind of forgot he's been on NXT a little bit, but AJ Francis is that guy we've been seeing on the WWE Treasure Show. And that was great because as soon as he catches him, he says, like, he screams out, "You must be outside your mind." And he picks him up and he basically DVDs him like onto the barricade, you know, and onto the floor. And then Swerve Scott throws him in the ring, hits him with his finisher, and wins the match. So very cool, you know, match there. I thought it was fantastic. I did not realize how good Swerve Scott is becoming, and I'm going to start watching a little bit more of him because, you know, lately I've been watching NXT, but still kind of eyeballing it from afar, and I liked everything I saw from Swerve Scott here. That was awesome. So those are pretty much just the high points. I'm not going to go through all the matches there. Those are the three key points I want to talk about: the cross stuff, Indy and Candice, and the Falls Count Anywhere match, which was awesome. Next week, big show on tap for Tuesday. We've got Raquel Gonzalez defending the NXT title against Mercedes Martinez. So we're getting that match next week, along with a cruiserweight title match. 2 out of 3 falls. Kushida putting the title on the line against Santos Escobar. That was set up on the show as well in that promo. So those 2 matches can be good. I kind of hope we see both champions retain. I'm fairly confident that Raquel will. Mercedes is just going to be a good first opponent for her to dispose of. And I don't really care, I suppose, in the cruiserweight title match because I know the match is going to be good, but I really like Kushida, and the fact that they just put the belt off on him after a long run, or a relatively long run by Escobar, I'd keep it on him. So either way, those matches are going to be good. So Dynamite and NXT both have set themselves up for really good shows next week, and Raw and SmackDown are go-home Backlash shows. So you would think, in theory, we could have a great week of wrestling next week, or we could get some great Tuesday and Wednesday stuff, and Monday and Friday can shit the bed. So we'll find out. We'll be monitoring it. We'll be here a lot. You're going to see a lot of me. We'll talk about it Monday night after Raw. That'll be our next review. Priest won it. Thank you for that. I have no memory. That's right. Oh, yeah, the hot tub deal, right? When he in the hot tub with Triple H and all that shit. That's right. Thank you for that. I kind of forgot. So he lost to Johnny? Is that what happened? Probably a lot of interference. I probably did a review on that match and just forgot it. Yeah, Indy and Candice are tag team champions, so that's good for them. But anyway, I'm probably going to get out of here now. I got some stuff to do tonight. I got to get ready for our watch along on Sunday. I'll be posting the link later on tonight for that. King of the Ring, 1996, we're going to be watching together on Sunday, so that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, and that's about it. All right, cool. I just want to make sure there was no other questions that I missed or anybody that I should have answered. Got them all. I hate when I get done sometimes and I realize I forgot a super chat or something. I'm like, ah, son of a bitch. So I just want to make sure I got everybody. I think we did. Thank you to the few of you that were here tonight watching this. This was fun. Hopefully this podcast will be seen this weekend by everybody else that wants to check it out on demand. And I hope you guys have a great, great Saturday. I will be back. The plan is right now to be back on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for a King of the Ring 1996 watch along. There is a slight chance I postpone it half an hour, I'm working that day. I'm working a crazy ass Mother's Day shift at the restaurant, but I am going to be home somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock. So I'm counting on being home in time. I'll have everything ready the night before. I'll just have to sit down and flip the switch on, and I'll be right here for you guys. But in the event that I do get hung up at work, I will let you guys know on Twitter. So make sure you follow me at Good Mic Work that we are going to postpone the watch along 30 minutes at the most. But I fully expect to be up here on time on Sunday. And that's the next time I'll see you. After that, we'll do our Raw review on Monday, and also working on a pretty big and fun video that's probably a month, maybe a little bit longer than a month away from being uploaded. I'll fill you guys in a little bit more on the details as we get closer. I'm working on it now. Excited about it. Kind of different, but also a little bit similar to what I did a year ago for my 10-year anniversary. So that'll be coming up probably early June, or at least super late May. So I got things in the works, y'all. It's going to be a fun month on the channel, and hopefully it will be a fun summer. So you guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you Sunday night for the King of the Ring 96 watch along.